So let's talk a little bit about the character that was connected to the mask. So we
Yes.
have her name was Kaisa, and she actually, I didn't know this, but I saw this in someone else's kind of recap video. I think it was Star Wars Explained, but they were talking about how she had appeared in the Aftermath. Remember when Aftermath did like the little interludes?
Yeah.
I think you read the Aftermath books, right? I think I remember you telling me you did.
I made it through two of them.
Okay. Um, so the interludes, I guess she had already appeared in those, so it was kind of a nice callback to bring her back. She is a kind of a tragic character. She is, basically someone who is part of the acolytes of the Beyond, and so kind of a someone who has a connection to the Sith, and almost like worshiping the Sith or trying
Yeah.
to find these relics and things like that. We had already been introduced to the acolytes in other materials, but she has now essentially been possessed by this mask. And now you can see her struggling throughout. Not that she ever tried too hard to get away from it. She kind of had given herself to it at this point. There were a couple moments where they would talk about, you know, how trapped she felt, but she wasn't at a point where she was ever going to get away from this mask.
Yeah. There were definitely, I mean, she's an extremely tragic character, though, right? There are sections of the story where she talks about not even knowing who she is anymore.
Hmm.
Komat mentions the exact same thing. She's lost herself. It got early on. She started to forget different things about who she was, who I was, who friends were, those types of things. And just that thought of, I mean, every time she would just wake up in her little nest that she made herself, without really any knowledge, any idea of how she got back there, what she had done, anything like that. That's just a very tragic character, in my opinion. But yeah, you're right. Like by the time we find her, that hopelessness has set it. Like
Yeah.
she has just got come to the point that nothing's ever going to be different.
And so this mask that she wears is actually from a character called Viceroy Exum Penshard. Uh, so I guess was like a Sith or dark side guy from the past, like from hundreds of years ago, they said, or did they
Yeah,
say thousands? I think they said hundreds.
long time.
But this guy was not a good dude. We have a scene where Luke kind of goes back and kind of experiences some of the things that he did, and basically just like slaughtering entire groups of people and
Yeah,
just murderous kind of character. And so that's who's in this mask and trying to survive through the mask, trying to, possess someone else. Um, we do get a pretty cool like battle between her and Luke, and she essentially dies in the battle. Like, the building that they're in comes crashing down, and she gets stabbed through the heart by debris. Luke, just like a true Jedi, doesn't finish the job, just like a leaves thing. He doesn't get the mask. He doesn't recover her body. He just leaves her there, leaves the mask there. So you kind of knew in that moment, okay, it's not quite done yet.
yeah.
Luke should have destroyed the mask. He should have taken it with him, but he left it be. And then there's a lot more detail to that we're not going to go through just because it would take forever. If you want to, if you want the detail, read the book. But there's these droids that she has that have had the kyber crystal shards put inside them, and they take them out and like put them in her and somehow recover her, and she's got a robotic arm now. It was like a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. There's a lot going on. There's the
Yeah,
whole
so
funeral procession through the like molten magma that they were like slowly melting and then handing her body back to the next group that would carry it further. It
yeah, that
was
was
it was
it
a
was a
whole
creative,
procession.
yeah, a creative description of the scene, and I was
Yeah.
riveted. Like that whole
Oh
part, I was
yeah.
just really like into it. But yeah, so she does survive. But the thing is, when she does survive that encounter, but she doesn't survive.
Right.
The spirit survives and kind of fully takes her over at that point. She's just a dead husk. Her character is now dead, and it's fully the spirit now of this dude that is now going to face off against Luke later in the book. But Yeah, I really liked, that in that inclusion of that character. I would kind of like to know a little bit more about her and maybe her time in the Acolytes of the Beyond, and maybe we'll get some of that in future stories where they'll go back and tell more of her story. But she was a very interesting character that I would kind of want to know more about.
So so there's the show, the acolytes, right? How
Yes.
much of this acolytes from the acolytes of the beyond do you think feed into that, or do you think it's going to be two separate things? Because that was the more that I saw the mention of the acolytes of the beyond, my mind was like, oh, there's the Disney Plus show that's coming, Acolytes, and
Mm.
like they've given no information about what that is. Now I'm curious how much of this stuff is going to end up getting pulled into that.
Huh. As someone who reads the books and comics, like that would be my hope that they would tie it
Yeah.
in. Do I expect them to tie it in? Probably not. I think the term acolyte sounds really cool.
Right.
And I think they were like, oh, that's a cool title. Let's call it the Acolyte. But I don't know that that was a purposeful, like, oh, this is called the Acolyte. We have the Acolytes of the Beyond. Those
Yeah.
things are connected. We'd maybe giving them a little bit too much credit to make that connection. Not that they haven't thought of it. I'm sure in the rooms that
Right.
they're doing these stories, are like, hey, by the way, we do have this other thing over here. And somebody was probably like, okay, that's fine, but that's in the books. Let's stick to this. So maybe they'll surprise me and connect it. If I had to guess, I'd say it's probably not connected at all.
Yeah.
I know the Acolyte show is supposed to be set in the kind of waning years of the High Republic.
Oh, okay.
So
I
it is
wasn't
definitely,
aware.
yeah. So it's kind of a pre what we know in the original trilogy, probably pre Emperor and all that. So my
Gotcha.
guess it's like kind of the story of a previous Sith, or a Sith apprentice, and they called the Acolyte. But if they make a connection to the Acolytes of the Beyond, even cooler.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
maybe
Cool.
that's who they worship. Maybe they worship the Acolyte. Uh,
The one that's beyond. He's moved
yeah.
out there,
So
or she's moved out there.
I believe it's going to be a she in the movie or the show Acolyte. The only casting that they've announced is a girl, so is a woman. So we'll see if she's the actual Acolyte or just someone in the show. My guess is she's probably who they're referring to as the Acolyte. Um, so we have her. We also had another character that we were introduced to, Comat, who I guess had some interaction with Luke in the past, and Luke helped her. Now she was also part of the Acolytes of the
Yeah.
Beyond, but Luke helped her. Uh, I tried to look up like, oh, did I miss this story? And I don't know that that story has been told anywhere else. I think they're referring back to it in the novel as something that happened, but it's not like it happened in another book or in a comic series, at least not that I could find.
That's and I really enjoyed this character. Very just like very serene. Not much going on, very even keel, but totally uh BA. Like she is a pretty
Yeah,
darn incredible person.
yeah, she's pretty badass. I'll say it for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate
That's one of the allowed
that.
words on our podcast. We're uh not the first time it's been used, but yes, yeah, very cool character, cool droid.
Yeah.
What was the
Oh,
droid's
absolutely.
name?
Master, I don't know, but it
Aiding
was a master
something.
swordsman.
Yeah, I was like, what? Why have we not had this before? Maybe we have, but just like kind of this droid that fights with a sword. Like, how cool is that? Like
And former master died and she found it standing guard over its former master's body because it vowed
yeah,
to protect
yeah,
it forever.
very like very like anime kind of idea. Like I could totally see them having like a spin-off show that's just about these two characters and it's like in an anime style.
Oh yes,
I
absolutely.
loved that droid. I was not expecting to read this book and find a new droid that, because there's definitely some particular droids that I really enjoy in the Star Wars story. Like IG-11 is one that I just think is so cool. But this is kind of one of my new favorite droids. It's just like, wow, this is such a cool idea. And the way that the descriptions of like her fighting,
Yeah.
and I was just like, yeah, thank you, Adam Christopher, for creating this character. I now have a new favorite. I hope this droid shows up in more material.
Fighting side by side Luke, as
Yeah,
the kyber crystal droids descend the hill, and
yeah,
the
like I need
the
to see that scene, that the final battle between like Luke and Comat and the droid and the Sith spirit dude and the snake things that are
yeah,
like there, like that whole final scene. I'm like, that could be the finale of like an amazing anime. Like I just want to see that like fully fleshed out, but not in live action because it would be hard to pull off. I
yeah,
want
yeah,
it in
yeah.
full on 2D drawn animation in like the Airbender style or something. Like I think that would be so cool.
Give us a Star Wars visions of Comat
Yes,
and her
yes.
droid.
Visions is a perfect place for it. Like give me that scene, but in Visions.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the droid is like watering plants and serving hot chocolate, and it's like that it's a pretty darn incredible droid.
Yeah, you mentioned hot chocolate. That's I love that they used hot chocolate because that's kind of a thing in in Star Wars literature. It's one of those things that people kind of make fun of a little bit, like, oh, hot chocolate in Star Wars, like that's kind of silly, but it's been established. It was in like some of the one of the earliest novels that came out used the term hot chocolate, and it's stuck, and now it's been used multiple times throughout Star Wars, and I love it. Um, so yes, I
It threw
loved
me
that
off.
inclusion. I'm sure
It
it
threw me
like
off.
as someone who's been reading the novels for a long time and kind of get the inside joke on that a little bit, the inclusion of it I think was almost tongue in cheek, and not the writer just being like, oh, I'm just gonna not come up with a better name. I'm just gonna call it hot chocolate. That's kind of been established in Star Wars that hot chocolate exists. So a lot of these writers like to kind of drop it in almost as like a little nod. So I had a big smile on my face when they were drinking hot chocolate.
I mean, they have calf. Why not hot chocolate? Right? That's they drink
Yeah.
their morning coffee. They have their hot chocolate. It's all good.
Yes. Calf, another word that makes me happy when I see it pop up in books. But
Caffeine pressure.
so yeah, that those characters were really interesting. She also, Comat also had the whole mask thing going on, so like they really liked the idea of these characters having masks. But yeah, I really enjoyed her character, and yeah, I thought that all that stuff was super cool. And she has like a white lightsaber.
Yep.
I don't think she's force sensitive. I didn't get that sense. Um, and they
Luke
don't describe
purified it,
her.
right?
Yeah, like Luke helped her purify the kyber crystal, and she has the lightsaber, the white lightsaber, which is pretty rare in Star Wars. There are other instances of white lightsabers, but it's not a common color to be seen. I know, like notably, Ahsoka has white lightsabers now. So, but I thought that was kind of cool that they had mentioned that he helped her, um, I guess, restore it
Yeah.
to that. Yeah, but yeah, she was definitely a cool character. Although I don't think we're gonna like see her show up at like Luke's Academy or anything like that. Like she's not like a future Jedi by any means, but definitely a cool character that is out there.
Yeah. Yep. I thoroughly enjoyed her hermitage on her planet as she collected basically radioactive material. Pretty darn cool.
You can
With her
sell
giant
that.
tiger cat, which again,
Yes.
like perfect anime character, right? She has her sweet droid. She has her giant tiger cat. Like it's perfect.
Right. Which I
Absolutely
believe
perfect
is
for
this.
visions.
I believe those cats were established in the High Republic as well. So it's a nice connection there to like that they're referring to some of these species and stuff that they're using in other books.
Yeah.
So it gives those of us that are trying to read everything, it's kind of like a nice, like, oh, okay, there's connections that make it kind of worth it.
Continuity.
Yeah.
It's good.
So anything else? I feel like we've kind of scattershot covered a lot of the different, events and topics in the book. Were there any characters? I know we missed. I know they went to the what was that, like mining facility or something.
Yeah. Nightside.
A friend of Lando who wasn't really a friend, and he ends up
Yeah.
just getting murdered.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
I thought he was gonna be a bigger deal than he ended up being. What was his name again? He had kind of an odd name.
Zargo Alexander or something along those lines.
Anaximander.
Anaximander. Thank you.
Yeah, he was interesting, and I thought was gonna kind of maybe be a bigger part of the story and kind of be a villain throughout, but he he's quickly dispatched by Ochi.
Yeah.
Ochi killed, I don't know what his kill count was, but he
Oh,
basically killed at least 5 or 6 people with that blade.
yeah. At least.
Uh, so yeah, that was he had quite a high body count, probably more than anyone else in the show, unless you count the explosion that killed like all
Right.
those Corsac troopers. That
Comat. Comat had probably had an equally high body count
yeah, that's true.
with her rifle. But yeah, so I mean, Halo Squadron at the beginning, New Republic kind of being pricks with their approach to helping Dathan and his family. They were my favorite people.
Yeah, they were maybe misunderstood a little bit. Very official, I would say.
Very official.
Maybe pricks wouldn't be the word I would use to describe.
They were not being helpful. Okay.
Yeah,
The entire story could have ended right there
they
if Lieutenant Zakar Asheron would have just stepped up and been like, "Yes, we'll help you."
yeah, come on to the ship, let's help them out. But I
Yeah,
guess they have to be careful with that stuff, you don't
yeah.
know who that could be. They could be like some sort of terrorists or something, or
Not to be callous about it, but karma. I mean, Halo Squadron did not exist. Well, Halo Squadron did, but he did
yeah.
not survive.
We got what else? So they did mention Ochi. I think I'd said before had worked with the Emperor, Vader, Kira. So a lot of mentions of characters that we'd seen in the movies. Plagueis and Revan both got
Revan got mentioned.
mentioned.
Yeah, yeah.
In the Sith, as the Sith Eternal were kind of like chanting the different Sith names, and Plagueis and Revan got mentioned. Um, I'm just
Am
kind
I
of going.
correct that this is the first canon mention of Revan? Do I
I,
recollect that
I
properly?
think I believe he was referenced, or they were referenced in some resource at some point. And this might be the
Okay.
first like novel, or kind of like fictional story reference versus like you know, a reference book reference. I
Okay.
think I think Revan was referenced at some point, but yeah, this might be the first novel that we've heard in canon. Um, I'm just kind of going down the list of some of the kind of Easter eggs. Shriv from the what's the game that he's in?
Battlefront
Yes,
2.
Battlefront 2. Um, he's made a couple of appearances, in different stuff, but this is nice to see him pop up here.
I,
Uh,
I I knew that reference. I knew him.
yeah, I was say you said you like the book, or you like the games, and
Yes.
he was definitely a standout character in that game. Uh, Kadara Calrissian is Lando's daughter's name. Um, I think that's new news. Maybe not. Um, hunting Deepa Bilaba. So that's who
Yes.
Ochi was hunting. Deepa, who was Kanan Jarrus's master, and
Yes.
was also the Padawan of Mace Windu. So notable character. Ochi was hunting, did not get her. Ended up having to face off against Mace Windu. So you're not going to usually win that battle unless
Yeah,
you're
and yet
Anakin
he
with the surprise
survives.
hand slash. That's the only way you can take out Mace Windu, is with a surprise hand
Take the
slash.
hand. Take the
Uh,
hand.
oh
Uh,
yeah, kind of notable was Luke doing his little the Vision Stone that he sat on, which took him to Exegol, kind of in spirit, but
yes.
he faced off against like these kind of wraith-like
I was
characters
gonna
on
say
Exegol.
major Lord of the Rings right there.
Yeah, like it was crazy because it was like, they seemed like they weren't physically there, but then they would be. And it was kind of that was another scene that I was kind of like really into as I was reading. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, this is so interesting. But then he's saved by Anakin. The spirit of Anakin shows up, which is pretty notable. I don't know that Luke's had that many interactions with his spirit of his father. And he shows up and kind of explains like he used basically all the power he could to help Luke get out of there.
Yeah.
So
And switching faces, right? Like it was young Anakin and then old Anakin, and there was definitely different
explaining the
different
special
forms.
editions, explaining the special edition retcons, right? Like
There you go.
he switches. It's
He's
and yeah,
battling
Luke
in the
wouldn't know.
force.
I guess Luke wouldn't really know to
Young.
recognize. young Anakin, although I guess there's probably hollows and stuff of him that he could have seen. But
Yeah.
uh yeah. So that was kind of a notable scene. And I think they had released that as an excerpt before the book even came out. Anything else?
I was, yeah, seeing Stone Tython, the dig sites, Lore Santeca, all that fun stuff. Ben Solo. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty much that pretty much covers it.
Yeah, Laura Santeca had some scenes, not a huge part of the book, but it's kind of nice to see because, he shows up in The Force Awakens, seems like a really important character, obviously has established relationships with a number of the characters, but we don't really know a lot of his backstory. So I like that they're starting to reveal more of his backstory. I know he also shows up in the comics with
Yeah.
Luke. So I want to do some more, of those reading that stuff. But they actually tie in the entire Santeca family into the High Republic books.
Oh, really?
Um, and there was another character. So they also borrowed the ship in this book. They borrowed Lena Graff's ship at one point, and the Graff family is another important family in Star Wars who show up in the High Republic, but also they show up in other books as well. So, it's kind of that expanded universe lore type stuff where if
Yeah.
the name Graff means nothing to you if you read this book and you don't know the rest. But if you see the name Graff and you've read the High Republic stuff and you've read some of the other books, you're like, ooh, the Graff family. So, that stuff that they really haven't fully explored yet, but they've kind of started dropping the seeds of the importance of the Santecas and the importance of the Graffs and kind of how they were these powerful families hundreds of years ago.
Huh.
So you can kind of see the connection to some of these characters. So I'm excited to learn more about all of that stuff.
Huh. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, Santeca definitely played a confidant role to Luke. Basically, Luke's like, I'm having these visions. I need you to at least help me try to make sense of them. So
Right.
that was cool.
Yeah.
Church of the Force.
Well, I think we've exhausted the conversation around this book, and there's a lot in this book. A lot there's probably a lot of stuff we didn't even touch on. I thought it was a really enjoyable read. It's kind of right up my alley. Anyone that listens to this podcast knows kind of my preferred type of books when it comes to Star Wars. Anything with Luke, anything with Jedi, anything with Sith. This kind of checked all the boxes for that stuff. And it filled in a lot of information in that kind of sequel era, which still has these big gaps that we don't really know what all these characters are doing at that time. And so I love anything that's going to fill that in as well. So I think there's still a lot of mystery. There's still a lot we don't know. They could fit in more novels with a lot of these characters. I hope we see some of these characters that were introduced in this book in future materials. And there's a lot of space that they could fit them in. So I'm excited for, and I think this was a pretty well-received book overall. So I hope they give Adam Christopher more, leeway and say, all right, this one was a good one. Like, it was the sequel,
Fill in more gaps. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed this one. I'm trying to think if this is the. I mean, I read you recommended one of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. I read that one. But outside of that one, I think this might be the newest novel that I picked up since then. And then The Ronin, which I finally finished.
I haven't read that at all. So is that the shirt you have on? Is that related?
Yes, it is the Ronin.
Oh, okay.
Funko Pop.
It's the Funko style Ronin.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. So all that said, this is like the first novel that I've read in a long time that has to do with Star Wars. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Like it filled in gaps. It was fun to read something with Luke, which I haven't read anything with Luke in a long time. So to get tidbits of his story post Return of the Jedi, prior to The Force Awakens. Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed reading it. It was fun to think through, talk with you about it. It's a good one.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I know I kind of like twisted your arm a little bit. I was like, hey, read this book and come on my podcast. So I'm excited that you liked it. And maybe that means, the next time I'm looking for someone to come on, and maybe I'll find another book that I think you'll like. And I mean, Ronin would be a good one. I haven't read it yet, but that might be a good one to go back and do that one. So